Hey, welcome back guys to Intermediate JavaScript and jQuery programming with JSON and Ajax. My name is Kaustubh Gharge, but you can call me KG. I'll be covering session 4 of this Intermediate JavaScript course today. Before we begin, let's look at the session outline. So in this session, we'll be discussing using jQuery selectors. We already covered some of them in previous session. However, we'll dive a bit deeper into them. We'll also cover wildcards, excuse me. We'll also be selecting by tag ID, class, attribute, and position. Again, we already covered one of these in the previous session. However, we'll look at the other ways we can select the elements on the page. Again, as a reminder, if you do not have fundamentals of JavaScript programming clear, you must take the Introduction to JavaScript course as well as HTML to understand the document object model. It's very important. All right, using jQuery selectors. So jQuery selectors are used to find or select HTML elements based on the name, ID, classes, types, attributes, even values of attributes, and much more. It's based on the existing CSS selectors. Okay, we already covered a few of them in the last session. For example, we covered ID as well as attribute. However, as we proceed along the course, we will use many of these selectors quite extensively. So, moving on to the next slide. Wildcards. So wildcard is a kind of selector which is used to get all the elements in the HTML. So let's go back to the code that I have right here, and let's say if I wanted to get all of the elements in this HTML document, what I would do is I would say console.log and initiate the jQuery and use this wildcard. So wildcard here in case is an asterisk to get all of them. Okay, and I will just save this. So I get all of the elements that are present in this document. The list is long, so you won't be diving deep into it, but you can take some time and make sure you go through all of them. Moving on. However, let's consider a use case where we have 3 input fields. Okay, so let me quickly add 3 input fields with IDs. So I'll say input of type text, and I'll give it an ID of, let's say, field. We had to create 3, right? So I'll just add 1 right here, close this, and create 2 more. All right, great. And in here, I'm gonna give it a different name, a different ID, because it has to be unique. Now, in here, if I wanted to get all of these, if I wanted to select all of them based on their ID, we know the naming convention, right? So we know the naming convention of the ID. So we can use a wildcard selector to select these elements. So what I will do here is I'll remove this and I'll put a square bracket, I'll say ID, and give me all of the IDs with field name that start with field and an underscore. Okay, and I will get a value of test. So all of them. So let's say I want to assign them some value. So I'll just assign them a value. So I want to assign all of them a value of, let's say, test. All right, great. So let me save this. So as you can see, I get 3 elements with an assigned value of test. All right, moving on to the next slide. So let's look at selecting by tag ID, class, attribute, and position. For ID, we already covered selecting elements by ID in the previous session, do you remember? The way we do this is by using the pound symbol followed by the ID selector. Like, let's say, in this case, let's say you want to log this out. So what I would do is I'll say console.log, put in a $sign, and I'll say pound, and let's say I want to log out the field 1. All right, save this. Oops, let me clear this out. let me save this again. All right, so this is the value I get for the field 1. So I've selected this ID. All right, excellent. So now let's say if we were to find the elements using a specific class. Okay, so to find elements using specific class, we write by using period character followed by the name of the class. So let's say if we were to give this a class of, let's say, my div class, the way I would access this element is by using, let me comment this out, and let me make some space here so that it's clear. So we log this out by using the class selector. So I will say $, and I will log in, say my, it is followed by the period. Okay, so you type in the period and you type in the div class. All right, excellent. Now if I save this, it will log it out, right? So it logged out the div element. Perfect. Now the same way we can use to find the element by using the tag name. So we have to use a valid tag name. I think we already done this in the previous session, but let's quickly look at how we can access the div, right? So instead of the class name, we will just say div. This will select all the divs that exist on the HTML page. So right now we only have one div. So if I save this, it gives me the existing div. So let me clear this out so you can see how this loads. So it gave me the existing div. All right, perfect. Moving on. Now attribute. So we use this to select all elements with certain attributes that contain some value that we are looking for. So for example, let's say if I wanted to get the get the element with the attribute of name and content div. So what I would do is I would log this out. So instead of here, let me remove this and let me say name equals my, not sorry, my, it's content div, right? So perfect. Let me save this. Let me save this. Oops. So I get the element that has the name attribute of content div. Perfect. Oops. Oh, we missed position. So we use this to find the position for a particular element. So let's say if you wanted to find the position of, let's say this paragraph, what we would do is we would select it by the name. So we'll select it by the ID. So I'll say my paragraph, and I will use the position function. So it'll give me the position of where it's located. So if I save this, it gives me the position. It says from left it's like 8 pixels and from top it's like 0 pixels. So perfect. Great. Now before we end this session, let's quickly recap of what we learned today. To recap, we quickly looked at a few more jQuery selectors in this session. We also learned wildcard selectors along with class, attribute, tag, and position selectors. We'll dive much more deeper into these once we start working on our projects. Okay, so in the next session we'll be looking at events and how we can use jQuery to handle events. So I'll see you in the next session. Take care. Bye-bye.